So I want to talk a little bit about Ukraine, about my time in Ukraine. It's going to be a casual conversation. We're not going to get into anything deep. I try not to, anyways. When I went to Ukraine, it almost didn't happen because I had planned the ticket 2 years before, but it was September of, I believe it was, maybe it was, no, it was definitely, no, it was before September. It was about May, June, around there of 2019. And I had saved some money to go to Ukraine. I've always wanted to go to Ukraine. I've always had this calling to go to Chernobyl, see it. And I remember during the tour group and everything, I had all that paid for. I had it all paid for in advance. Well, I had it wasn't fully paid for it. You had to pay a percentage of it up front, and then you pay it when you get over there. So I had that taken care of, and I had the plane ticket already. But then COVID came, and I just sat on the ticket and all that, and I had it planned for June 17th. I believe it was June 17th. And when I got through COVID, the whole COVID thing got bad. And it lasted a year, over a year, because it didn't come over here until, it didn't really get bad it didn't cause problems for us in the United States until, what was it, April? I remember it was spring break for college, and that was the last time I went to college in person. And that was like 2 or 3 days before, well, maybe not even 3 days. I think it was at the beginning. It was the beginning of spring break, and it just completely ruined everything. So when June came around, I decided to move my ticket a year in advance. And I'm sorry for all these gaps. The reason I almost didn't go was because they had COVID restrictions in June 17th of 2021. And I was thinking, I really didn't have, I was running out of money. And I couldn't really afford it. And I was like, I can't push it another year. And I knew I couldn't. So that week, the week before, like on Sunday that same week, I told Delta, put my, credit the money to the account, and I'll keep the money there. And because you had to do this COVID test, and they weren't really open, it really didn't tell you how to get to Ukraine because of they said you needed a COVID test, but it also said that you had to be Ukrainian, I believe it said. So it wasn't really clear if Americans could go or not. And I was like, I might as well cancel because I don't know. And would you believe that the day I was supposed to leave, that I was supposed to go to, I was flying out of Houston, and I was in Washington at the time, Washington State, so I couldn't really go to, but at 6 o'clock in the morning, on June 17th, I got an email saying, all you need is a COVID test and any American can go to Ukraine, the day I was supposed to leave. And I was like, oh. So, I was like, I almost didn't want to go because I didn't have the money, And I didn't really know much about Ukraine. You know, I had thought about canceling it. And I was like, you know, I wanted to go see Chernobyl my entire life, and I didn't really want to go, but I said, well, I'm gonna get a new plane ticket, pay for it, and go over there. First time out of the country, so I leave about 2 or 3 days later. And I'm by myself. I remember it clear as day. I remember it all. Going over there, and you know, you had to sign these forms to get into what is it? I know it was the Netherlands airport. You had to sign these release forms, I guess, for COVID, if you've had COVID, you know. And that was a long line. That took a very long time. Then we had to sit in the top plane for like 2 hours because they couldn't get the locks on the baggage wouldn't shut, so they had to replace it. And this was at night, and we were in a hot plane. So then we fly, and it turns out we're 30 minutes late on the next flight. The flight to Ukraine it left 30 minutes before I arrived. So I had to go to Netherlands, and I had to figure out how to get my tickets all sorted out. And I was like, oh my God. First time I've ever been in a situation. Out of the country. And I just went with the flow. You know. And you know, and I eventually made it to Ukraine. And that was a hot plane. Dude, no, that was a hot plane. Like, there was no air conditioning at all. Now, they did pass out magazines, you know, telling you about Ukraine and what's been going on. It was from like May. It was the May issue for 2021. So I ended up in Bospor, and I'm confused because I didn't know where to go, because like the Ubers, I kept getting Ubers, but they kept getting canceled because I didn't know where to go, because there was actually a platform above that you're supposed to walk up, and I didn't know that, so I was walking all around back and forth Bospor, trying to avoid all the taxis, because the taxis, they're going to charge you a lot of money, and that's if they even accept cards, you know, and I didn't want to take that route, so I eventually figured out how to get to the platform of Uber, to get to the hostel. And I didn't know this at the time. Call this destiny, call it fate. But the tour when I was looking at the maps, because it was like 3 days before Chernobyl tour thing, and I get an email. Well, actually, I didn't get an email. I got an email afterwards. But when I checked the map to see where this place was, it was literally right across the hostel. It was like, wow, I didn't know that. So I walk across there, and we're talking, and the Chernobyl tour group, the website I showed you, the tour group it almost got canceled because there wasn't enough people in the group. We had, I believe it was, 3 people of the English who signed up for English, and they didn't have enough English speakers. But they said, well, don't worry, because we may be able to put them together. If there's not too many people, we can put them together. So about 2 days later, and I had this all set up for June 24th to go, or was it June 23rd? I believe it was June 23rd, because I was there for 3 days. On June 23rd, we but sometime June 21st, I think it was 21st, shortly before, I get an email saying, hey, the tour is ready. If you want, you can decide to cancel, or you can go and pay now. So after I got that email, I went straight over there and paid for it. And they said, this is where you go, this is where you meet, and everything. So, yeah. That's how I went to Chernobyl. And it was interesting because every sign we passed was for the Chernobyl tour group. It was like I was supposed to be there. I didn't think about that at the time. I didn't think about that. There were billboards. There was this bus that was said from 1980. It had the date for the Chernobyl disaster, 04/26/1986, and it had it printed. And above that was the Chernobyl tour. And even the gift shop, well, it wasn't really a gift shop. It was an outside kiosk, and it said Chernobyl tour. And that was interesting. There was like I said, there was a billboard outside. There was a billboard outside in the middle of nowhere that said the Chernobyl tour. And in the Chernobyl, I actually was in the power plant too. And before you got into the cafeteria, the Chernobyl's tour was there too. And that was the gift shop. Although it was closed when I went there. But all these, like, there was no other brand shown or advertised in the zone except that one. I don't know if my eyes were just focusing on that. Now, there were buses that had different names of the tour groups, but they were one-day tours. I was on a 3-day tour. I wanted to do the 7-day tour, but they only had like one of those like once a year, and it was in September. And I was like, yeah, it might be too cold, and you know, like. Anyways, I was in Chernobyl for 3 days, and I survived. I stood in front of the power plant too. I was there next to the catfish, the 5 feet catfish. They're like huge. They're like that long, dude. A ton of them. Tons of them. I'll end this video and I'll do a part 2.